Hi there, this is an attempt at a very short and sweet overview of the Fiery Dragon Enterprises version of Arriba, Espana by Brian Train. It's since come out in a newer edition in the, I think, World at War magazine, which features a larger map. You can see the size of this map. But this is a mini game, and it's a very handy size. I'll say that because I think a lot of people who bought it blew up the map. And in fact, I have to say the maps, I've truncated it. I've kind of folded it back here, and there's a double fold, so I sort of taken 2 centimeters off it that way, in order for me to fit it on this board. The reason being that this is a metal-plated whiteboard, hence it's magnetic. And what I did is all of these counters were like thin cardboard, perforated cardboard, and I took them all and put magnetic backing on all of them, and so now I have my go-to travel game. So I took this on holiday with me to hotel rooms that we were staying at recently. Since come back, and I've just finished off the game here at home. So here's the map. You see it's divided into regions, and each region has a number of areas, and each area has a city. Sometimes areas also have mountains. Generally you're fighting for control of cities, but you want control of regions. If you have control of regions, as indicated by this control marker, you gain in political points, and the game is all won on political points. You have a political support level track from 0 to 99. If you reach 0, you lose the game. You can't go higher than 99. And as you can see, on the end of the 8th game turn, I just called this game because the rebel player, that is actually the fascist forces trying to overthrow the Republican government, have reached sort of a very low level, and the reason being that the Republicans control most of the map. You see all these control markers, and the rebels only have been having complete control of 3 or so areas each turn, some areas being contested and passing from one side to the other. But it's reached a point where it's going to, my game, it would be a kind of stalemate. You can see a fort here, fort here, fort here. And this is actually rebel held, but we can the government forces could build a fort here. There's rebel holding here in this contested region. They've basically got that cordoned off, so they can basically sort of go into trench style warfare and keep the rebels cordoned off in this area, and the rebel support is not strong enough to going to be able to contend it. So I've called it at this point, having learnt quite a few things, well, 1 or 2 things, but the most important things I think of how to play as the rebel player, which I didn't manage in this game. So I'll just show you a bit more what you get. So you get a lot more counters. These are all the counters. You can see they're all magnetized, so if you do get this boxed edition, you can do this, and it's all handy ready. And I've actually been playing it with the turn record track and the political support level track held onto the other side of the tin by these tiny magnets. And so you see I've got everything I need to play handy like that. Then you also get a combat results table. There's a couple of annotations of my own. You get equipment points cost table, recovery table for units that get disrupted. You get a random events table, which you roll for every turn. Sometimes you don't get random events, often you do. Setup chart. And then the all-important political support level adjustment summary. And then this is an optional variable doctrine table. So you get various assets. You can see down the bottom here, armour, air, artillery, and also increased cadre level of your units, and the variable doctrine table can determine which ones you can use for a number of turns. The random events table includes things all the way from say British and French elections, which can affect the foreign power track. So you see this Germany, Italy and Portugal are generally pro-rebel, so they start supporting them. They can go from neutral, they can go down into neutral, or they can go up to intervention. So intervention is greater than support. France and Britain start neutral, can go either way, and the USSR starts supporting the government and can go towards actual intervention for them. So support and intervention are more or less the same, except you get more equipment and political support points through intervention than support. Plus, all important, if Italy intervenes on the rebel side, you gain 4 units here. I should mention something about the units. You generally start with brigades. They cost 1 equipment point. You can go up to a 4 strength division, which can then be increased up to a 5 strength division, and that's a 2-step division. That's a 1-step division, and brigades only have 1 step. The combat is quite bloody in that, say for example, on 3 to 1, these are stepped exchanges. So in this, it's interesting, instead of just a standard exchange, the attacker decides how much they're going to force the defender to exchange. So they could just say exchange 1 combat factor all the way down to however many they have. So it could result in just a small exchange or complete elimination of the defender if the attacker has more. But then attacker loss, defender loss. So even at the highest, generally you're rolling a d6. You get a few die roll modifiers for the assets. You get some column shifts, for example. With that political support of the rebel side going down as low as I was showing you, below 20, they're going to get a minus, and often now the government in my game were going up to 80 plus, they would get a plus column shift. But anyway, so generally you're rolling 1 to 6, so the attacker's even going to take a loss, and that means in effect that one of these would be broken down into a remnant unit, which would satisfy 3 combat factors losses, but there's not one there. So often you want to take like a division with a brigade along into combat to lose the brigade rather than break your division down. So it's quite a bloody combat table. Losses on both sides nearly all the way along. I didn't get up to any combat there, and I have to say that I have played this once or twice before, and I noticed, similar to me in this game, I'm playing solo, but I didn't buy assets much. I was more concentrating on forces, and I found that there's a lot of counters in the game that you don't actually need, but I'm not saying that that's a fault. I'm just saying that you've got all those options, but you have many more counters than you could bring on all at one time. So it's not actually like a heavy game in terms of units on the board, but you've got a lot of options, like you could go all out on armour. And perhaps that's a tactic which I should try with the attackers, because you can get a kind of like a breakthrough with them, so forth. Or you can go with artillery and forts, which are good on defence, or you have air, which are sort of handy on both. You've got your air ready and used bot for each side. And you've got different types of units, so different colours like anarchists and Gabonito, sort of regional forces. And that the regional forces sort of originate here. The yellow ones are the overall Spanish government forces, and these blue ones are the nationalists, and they also have some colonial troops. So just make out that kind of movie there, who came from the Spanish Morocco box. You also have those car lists and some pink forces, which I haven't brought into the game. I think they come in on a random event. So it's a very dynamic game. You do have supply, but the supply is sort of generally quite easy. You know, you sort of have to trace it to a friendly region. And it's a very dynamic game because movement is free, so there's no movement points. You can, because each turn's like 2 or 3 months, you can basically move through controlled areas or uncontrolled areas all the way till you reach an enemy held area. So unless you sort of have a scattering of forces completely blocking the enemy, they can move more or less where they like. So especially at the beginning of the game, there was a lot of fluidity in the combat, and that is necessary because the government starts off here. I mean, the rebel nationalist force start off here and here, and then the government kind of and here, and then the government is in between and surrounding them. So you've got nationalist forces kind of merging from 3 directions, trying to organise themselves. So very interesting in different strategies necessary for the nationalists versus the government Republican forces. So I think it's a nice game. It's the rule book is only about 17 of these short pages long. It's very well described. I had no ambiguities in it at all. In an earlier version, I understand that there were some ambiguities and clarifications necessary. The only thing that I changed in the rulebook was in the way the combat results are handled in the before this version, but not in the World at War version. It was a bit, you could kind of knock out a division with a brigade too easily. This way the divisions get to break down rather than get completely knocked out by such a thing. So there's some optional rules, bringing in some, even a multiplayer version. I used the fortifications. There's that variable doctrines. You've got naval blockade you can bring in. Variable setup. A little bit of designer's notes, so it's all in there. Great game. I would highly recommend it for someone interested in not the flat-out combat, but there's a kind of like, with the foreign power track, you have to spend political support points to move that track, and you have, and it's a big risk. So for example, you can spend up to +3 on a 3d6 to try and get 6 or a 9 with a couple of other modifiers for movement in your favour or taking your enemies out of their favour. But that would cost you 3d6 of plus the basic 2 for trying to alter one of the factions on this of political support points. So you can understand you might lose 3 or 18 political support points on one such roll. So this can move up and down quite a lot in that initial phase of each game turn where you're sort of fighting over the foreign powers support and intervention, and then you're spending equipment points based on for control of a few places here, depending on the turn track, which alters, but basically more of them are in the government hands at the start, and fighting with those, and then at the end working out who had control and thereby gaining of the whole regions, and thereby gaining more political support points back, which is how that moves up and down. So you're kind of trading off gaining support and intervention and equipment points, versus then using that to regain the political support that points that costs you. It'd be interesting. I'm not playing this game out because I don't think the nationalists can win. Now, and the government, they only have to hold on. If they don't get knocked out before the game ends, they win by default. So the onus is on the nationalists to push, and I didn't manage it well. I've taken down some notes now to put in the box to remind me of that strategy next time I pick up the game, which will definitely be next time I have a holiday and enough space just to put in this little magnetic board and the tiny box to take this little treasure of a game with me.